Welcome to the Divescore Closing Table with Seth Getz, the podcast where M&A professionals, deal makers, and industry experts come together to break down the art and the science of mergers and acquisitions. So let's all grab coffee and let's talk about buying, selling, and everything between. So my guest today is Kelly Cousineau, the founder of Conquer Change Coaching. And she helps business owners who prepare emotionally and mentally through the massive transition in life after their business. Now, for over 20 years, Kelly has worked with corporate executives, providing strategic planning and business process improvement. She's also a certified professional leadership coach and an accredited value builder system guide. So she brings both a strategic mind and a coaching heart to this work. But I want to go beyond some of those titles and some of those accomplishments. What really stands out when I talk to Kelly is that she has walked this road herself. She's left a successful career. She lost her sense of identity in the process and then rebuilt it. And that's why she is so passionate about helping others with the change and going through the same thing. So thank you, Kelly, so much for being with us.
My pleasure. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
So, Kelly, I want to go down this topic. There's a wealth of information, and we've talked about this numerous times on this podcast, about getting your business ready to sell. The financial systems, the management of the business, the customer base. But I feel like there's far less attention given to preparing the owner, both emotionally and mentally for one of the biggest transitions in their life. I compare sometimes it's of the level of getting married sometimes. It's a huge transition of what's going on. And so I want to talk this through and say, what is it that we can do to help them navigate that internal journey so they don't just exit well, but they land well too?
There are, first of all, the comparison between getting ready mentally versus getting all the business things ready is that there are so many tools out there for getting the business ready. There's not so many, or they're not as familiar to get themselves ready mentally. I think another thing is we're all familiar with, even though we might not know all of the details in terms of getting the business ready, we're familiar with cash and customers and revenue and profit and all of that. But again, we're not very familiar with this. Another thing that makes those a little bit different is that we can all work on the business. It's this thing that's separate, even though there's usually a strong attachment. But it's not me. We're not working on me. So I think those are some of the reasons that it's not addressed normally. I have some things that I've seen normally come up or surprises that come up. Is that something you'd like?
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I mean, some of the things that are shifted there, because as you talked about, it is a huge shift for them. And it is so much harder to work on internal to us. We don't like it. I mean, it's so much more difficult to go through this process of working on us internally.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you've seen that they've gone through that have been a struggle?
First of all, accepting what other people think about your business, whether that's the potential buyer or acquirer or anybody that's not you, because you have such a vested interest in every decision that you've made. You have a vested interest in all the products that you have on board. Even if they're not the most productive things that you've done, you have an emotional attachment to them. And other people come in with a much more objective perspective. And they're going to look at things and, I can take that out and I can do this. And it's very easy for owners to feel, like, how could they say that? Or again, personalize it and think that those are attacks on them as a person when it's really just this aspect of your business.
I think about how much this business and their person's business, when they built up, is their baby, and how much it means to them. And there's a saying in the business, you don't ever want to tell someone that their baby is ugly. Right. You don't ever want to say that to a person who's just, it's so hard for them to hear.
Yes.
I remember reading about that they had done a study where they had looked at and they took and scanned the brain for when people were talking about their kids.
Oh.
And then they talked about their business, and the same areas of the brain lit up when they're talking about their business and about their kids. It is such an emotionally a strong attachment that when they talk about, there's a level of passion there. So trying to take it and having anyone else ever come in and say, oh, you've got a nice business there, but we'll just change this, that, and the other. Oh, that's hard to take.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's probably the first one. And I've even had a client who she was projecting, she hadn't even been told anything, but she said, I think I'm just embarrassed because the performance this was coming out of COVID, and the performance had been so poor the last few years. And so she didn't want to expose that. That was going to be very embarrassing for her to have to open up those financial records and let the world see what she was not proud of. So that's one.
Another As a business owner, used to projecting this sense of strength and solitude, and this business is thriving well. And anyone ever asks you, hey, how's your business going? What do you say? Every single time. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And so trying to be real at times is difficult.
Yeah. And she knew that going through this process, people were going to look at it. They were going to look at the facts, not what she was going to say. I think the other one that comes up most is when the owner finds out how critical it is that other people don't find out. So in your world as the broker or the M&A advisor, I'm sure it's one of the hardest things you have to tell them is, no, you can't tell your employees. No, you can't tell your clients. And if you do, all these things are going to happen. And I think especially and I don't want to say it's just our generation. And by the way, for those who can't see me, I'm in that boomer generation. We highly value honesty and some transparency. And most of the owners that I'm working with, they desperately want to tell people so that they can prepare them. And they're trying to be loyal to their employees in exchange for that loyalty back. And when they're told no, you can't tell anybody, it's really challenging for them. One of my current clients.
How do you navigate through that? I mean, as you talk to a person, because for the sense of the deal and for the deal to go through and for them to get the best value of the business and for them to make the best transition, that's still true. And yet it's hard.
Yes.
So how do you talk to them about that process of, no, here is the reasons why it's important for you to not share?
Yeah. In almost all of the work that I do around change, and I probably will end up bringing this up more than once in our conversation, is you have to look farther out. And so the farther out is the best solution. And the best solution is rarely a perfect solution. We don't get everything we want. And so I'm often trying to remind them, if you really care about your employees, and we've been told, because I don't like this either, I would much rather side with the owners and let's just tell everybody.
Yeah.
But if you do, and that all of a sudden like pops the balloon and the business fizzles out, it's not even so much about what the owner loses in terms of value. Like, what do you have for your clients? What do you have for your employees? There's no business anymore. So it's a lesser of all evils. You either let the business kind of go down, you'll get a little bit to walk away. They're not going to get anything. They're all going to, and even if some of the employees start leaving, that's, it is like popping the balloon and all of a sudden it's not what it was. So that's really what I do most, is have them look ahead, help them understand there isn't a perfect solution. And then I'll remind them, because it's 100% true, you wouldn't have gotten here if you didn't have to make hard decisions like this. Like, you wouldn't be here. You would have nothing to sell if you weren't adept. And it hasn't been easy, but it's what you know to do.
Yeah. And for them to do that, because if you tell them up front, employees or the clients, what's going to happen, and that you're looking at possibly selling the business, then as you say, quite often the clients start questioning, okay, do I stay with this company or do I make other plans? And the employees are like, well, things are going to change. Maybe I should start looking at the job market now. And the value of the business, because the business is, a lot of the value of the business is the team and the team effectiveness and the client base. And so therefore the value of the business goes down. And when the value of the business goes down, their jobs actually do come in jeopardy, unfortunately.
Yeah. My most current example, like just the other day, I was coaching a client who had been approached by a strategic buyer. and worked for months and months and months, and that didn't happen. And so he's very happy because now he's going to look at an employee ownership, which is a happy place for many owners, because notice every time I say the word feels, it feels like the perfect solution, because I don't have to be a trader and I don't have to let somebody else come in that I don't have control over, and this and that and the other thing. And sure enough, he starts talking about, and I'm going to pull them all in and I'm going to tell them that I'm working on this, and I'm going to ask them if they want to be owners someday. And I'm like, but wait, I just have to tell you, in this case, it might not even be so much about confidentiality. But when I had a job in corporate America, and as you've seen in the world, corporations are constantly merging and being acquired. And we were going through that. As employees, hundreds of us literally stood around all day and just talked about what was going to happen. That's all we did for days and days. And every time something happened, that's what we talked about. And so I said, this is what's going to happen. You can't really tell them anything more, and you're just going to make their life really uncomfortable. So it's more like you have to be the mature parent and hold information back, because it doesn't help them. It doesn't help them at all. So I think he shifted. I'm hoping he shifted. I can't control him. But
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
said, you're right. I think that's a good point. So
Yeah. So you've talked about some of the preparation that needs to go into this and some of the things they need to be aware of in this process. When they are going through the process, when the process started and they're talking to potential buyers or something like that, or they've signed a letter of intent and now they're going through the closing process, and now it's like it feels real, both in terms of we know the dollar amount and we've got a date for this thing. It feels very real. What are some of the emotional curveballs that you've seen them have where they just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was going to happen?
The better question is, or the more accurate question is, what is not a curveball? Because I know there are some people who are either serial flippers or they may have sold a business earlier. But I think right now, the majority of our owners who are selling, it's the first and only time they've ever done it. So they know nothing. They know nothing about the process except what we're telling them. Or maybe, a friend of theirs sold a business and they got some information that way. But I think some of the things that I was sharing earlier, these, not understanding that people are going to say bad things about your business or things that you don't agree with, not understanding how important this loyalty is. Another thing is letting go, which is really facing that separation anxiety. Like I faced that when I was literally, I think maybe the night before my wedding. I really believed this is what I was supposed to do. I believed God called me. This is exactly, I knew I wasn't capable of making the decision, but I was like, this is it, right? This is it. When they're going through it, this is it. And they have to actually face. It's the same as launching a child. You work your whole life or you work 18 years, 25 years to raise this child, to let them go. And now they're going. And, letting go is really a hard thing. And I don't think we give any time to that. And partly because it's painful. So why would I? Why would I start preparing for that until I actually have to?
Right. So it's you wait until there's a letter of intent signed before you start to feel all the feels of I'm going to let go of this thing.
Right. And another thing that I don't know that the owners understand, and I probably could do even a better job with this, is that whatever you're feeling, everybody's going to figure it out. In fact, we went out to dinner last night with a couple, and the man is retired from the sheriff's organization in a rural community in the state of Michigan. And he said, one day I decided to have a social experiment, and I was in a very good mood. Everything was fine, but I decided to try something. And every time I left my office, I went in a hurry. So I hurried to the water fountain and I hurried back. I hurried to the bathroom and I hurried back. I hurried to the copy machine and I hurried back. And he said, you could just see the stress level go up. And then when over the rest of the day, I just slowed down a little at a time, because everybody feels it, right? They just feel that's going to come. So the more nervous you get or anxious or concerned going through the process, people pick up on that.
Isn't it the same way with parents and children?
Oh, of course. And we think that we're hiding it.
Right. And we're not.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yep.
Not at all.
Huh. So people do in that process, when all these feels hit them, they often will get cold feet. And sometimes that hits them very strongly. Sometimes it's just like a feeling they get like, oh, I don't know. How can you prepare them mentally for that before it happens? Like what kind of information do you give them? What kind of thought process can you take them through to help them prepare for those experience of what they're going to go through?
I like to, it's repetitive because whatever thoughts we have, especially at our age, we have thoughts and values and beliefs that have been there forever. So it takes a while to create new ones. And so whatever I'm giving them along the way. And they come in what I had said a moment ago, you have to look forward, you have to look beyond, because all humans going through change, we're always looking at what we're losing and what we're leaving. And, just that pang and the pull of the heart and all of that is hard. And every time you look there, it's going to create doubt and it's going to create second thoughts and all of that. So what you want to do is just continually remind yourself of where you're going. This is where I'm going. I like to remind people that you've made a decision. You made a decision when you were logical. This is another information bit that I share is we don't make good decisions when we're emotional. I like to think of it as a heavy maple syrup over your brain. When you have an intense emotion, you have no logic, you have no problem solving skills, you have nothing. So you have to choose to trust that I made this decision, I'm going the right way, and then find a way to get yourself out of it. Another tool that I've been sharing with people for a while is what I call worrying. So I defined worry as predicting negative outcomes for the future. And so in this moment, all of a sudden, some what if what if this happens? And what if, what if I don't get the money in? What if they don't treat my employees right? And what if I don't know what to do with myself? And there are all these what ifs, and then they just circle around like a dog chasing its tail. And by the way, Webster defines worry as tormenting yourself with disturbing thoughts. Isn't that pleasant? So I invite clients, when you notice that you're worrying, it's okay, but put a little timer on it and then force yourself to think the positive alternatives, because it literally is just as likely that they're going to take great care of your employees, that you're going to have plenty of money, that you're going to know exactly what to do. In fact, the more I look around, there are definitely some people who have moved beyond a very active job, like owning a business, that don't know what to do with themselves. And then there are others that are like, how did I ever work? I have no idea how I ever worked. So there's almost a 50-50 chance, and give equal time in your brain to thinking about, but all these positive things, like this could be the greatest thing I ever did. I'm going to come away wondering why I didn't do it 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm. And that leaves another question here, and that is, we've talked about the preparation and talked about the fact that it's a difficult thing to go through this process. The process is hard. It is hard in every way. There is no getting around it. It's hard. Mm-hmm. But there's something on the other side of this. There's something on the other end of it. And this is what's next. Mm-hmm. So how do you get them prepared for what's next? And I heard one person say that there's often a obstacle in people's way, and you can either try to chip away at that obstacle, or you can make the goal so big that the obstacle appears small.
Oh, wow. I haven't thought of it that way before.
But if the objective is so large, if the objective is such a big and exciting thing, the difficulty of going through this process now doesn't seem that difficult. How do you actually build this up and help a person think about what's going to happen in the future?
Well, I don't do it in such a grandiose way. I do it in a much more methodical way. Mm-hmm. And we have, first of all, I call it your next adventure. I never call it your second half, right? Or
it is the next adventure.
It's just next chapter, next adventure. And for entrepreneurs, they like adventure. So that's what I like to, that's supposing or assuming it's going to be really cool when you get there. And for sure, what I say is don't wait until then. oh my goodness, that's probably the worst thing that you could do is just wait till then. So what we do is we try to start thinking about the future. And I have a couple of tactical things to do. Some people have it's so impossible to think about what my life would be like after because I'm still in it. And so I invite people to think about some of the external things like, well, you can probably predict, will you still have kids at home or not? Will you have grandkids? What stage of life will your parents be in? So start thinking, just start envisioning what those tangibles are. And that gets you into the right place, right? Those are easier to think about. And then I invite what we call possibility thinking. And you don't ever ask yourself, what will it be like? But you ask, what could it be like? Or what might it be like? Like, what if I lived in a smaller house? Or what if we had 2 houses? Or what if I picked up that hobby that I passed when I was 35 years old and I just said, I don't have time for it now? Just kind of start asking all of those what if questions. Another thing that I recommend based on my personal experience is start talking to your spouse about it sooner rather than later, especially if you have a specific idea of what you want your next adventure to be. Because in my example, it was more my husband was retiring from a job. We had our home in Michigan and we were living in Wisconsin, and I couldn't wait. We'd been waiting 15 years for me to come live in my home in Michigan. And he starts talking a couple of years before his retirement, and he said, I can't wait till I'm retired because we're just going to travel all the time. And I was like, what? I can hardly wait to live in my dream home and you want us to leave? And so I had it took me a while to process that. And I think what happens is sometimes we are thinking about things and we just assume our spouse is coming along and maybe they aren't. So I invite people to start talking about, because that could be a big disappointment. Like you
shared
think it's the
vision
greatest idea ever. And it's not. And then the last tip is we literally use the language of practicing retirement. So we just start practicing. Like if you think that's an idea, how can you go practice that now? And I think from the perspective of getting the business ready is a double win, because the more we can get the owner out of the office or out of the plant, the more we quickly figure out how dependent are we and what is that person bringing to the table that we think. And sometimes the next generation just thinks that owner doesn't have anything of value anymore, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, this is what they do. And it helps the business figure out how to adapt to that, which also gives the owner more confidence. Like, oh, okay. Like they're practicing and they get to see the business running a little bit without them and still have time to come back and fix some of those gaps and find out what's working and what's not working going forward.
That practicing is so brilliant, both on the building up of what you want to do, but also for the business, because I've told people before, sometimes the best thing you can do for your business is to leave it. And you leave it for 2 weeks, a month, and you come back and say, oh, okay, everything worked, but this and this kind of broke. Yes. Let me work on that area. Let me work on those things now, because now I know, and I wouldn't have known that before. So it's figuring those things out, which increases the value of the business. And it's better.
And it helps them let go, because I think that's part of the fear is, well, if I let go, it's going to drop and it's going to break into a million pieces and nobody's going to be able to fix it. And so if you can just, let go a little bit and then, back up. And so I have a client that went last year, he went to Arizona for 1 month, and this year he went to Florida for 2 months. And I work with his son, who's probably the one who's going to own it. And he says, he called me 12 times a day last year. This year, he's only calling me 4 times a day. He's even skipping a day here and there. Yeah. And the dad, really, he's got that confidence that he's doing okay. He's figuring it out. And really, we can't prepare for every exception that's going to happen. And so seeing how the son works in the exceptions, because it's not all predictable.
What you said about, I love the way you phrase this, your next adventure.
Yeah.
I think about the way that goes through. And so it's something that you work with people through the process of figuring out, preparing for this thing, going through the process and being ready for what your next adventure is. All crucial stuff.
Yeah. So. And you can kind of do it all together. And, that's why don't wait. Just start now and say, my eventual goal is here. And I'm just going to start getting ready for that. And then we'll see how it comes. But even that is enough to help you get emotionally ready before you actually go through. Because like you said it's really hard. And I wanted to comment that it's emotionally hard. There's nothing else. I mean, it might take a lot of extra hours, but that's another thing business owners are used to. Like they can do that in their sleep. That's not the problem. The problem is the emotional. It is the emotional.
Yep. You got it. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for talking this stuff through. And we'll put the contact information for Kelly if you want to talk with her about it, because she is a valuable resource as you're thinking about this in the early stage. I'm thinking this is going to happen in my life. There's going to be a transition coming up here. I need someone to talk me through it and work me through it. That is something that Kelly can do a very good job of. So thank you again, Kelly.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for future episodes. The Closing Table by Nuvescor was created by Rebecca Jelsma and produced by Aaron Sherman.